the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. For this week's episode, I have apparently struck a chord in conversation. As normal, each week I go over and send out emails to those that have signed up to our list, which, by the way, I always welcome you to do so. You can send me an email at lauren at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. I'll join you to the list, or when you sign up for the show here, it enrolls you into the email send there. Any which way, I set out not a manifesto, but kind of a frustration point. Now, for all of you who watch the show quite regularly, which by the way, thank you all, 39 countries and counting. I should count the time zones because it is absolutely amazing. And I keep looking over to my left, only because I simulcast on all of the platforms, as most of you know, between Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, also our TV channel, Hospitality Channel. We are on Roku and Apple and Amazon and Android TV and so forth. Um, so we get a lot of feedback from different channels, but I just can't see everyone's feedback at the same time. So I apologize. The only ones I really see are the ones you see on the screen here, which join directly to our live show. So if you want to hop from what you're on to us, you're more than welcome to. Just go to bit.ly/HDM show 338. As you see, it progresses each time. Next week is going to be 339. So today's topic is HR. Now, I have at times kind of dug into HR and got on the soapbox and talked about um, hospitality HR. But this week I thought, and this came out of an email I received from Mark. Mark, by the way, thank you. I won't use your last name. You're one of many that said, can you go back to the HR thing? Um, because they enjoyed me kind of ribbing our industry on what we as an industry do for HR. Now, let me first lay some track down. Not everybody does this. Unfortunately, a lot of people do the way we're going to describe this. And so rather than just complain about things, as I said in my title, quit bitching, start fixing. We have to. We have to. If you haven't already tried to start doing this, you're late and you need to. You need to change how HR is being done by our industry, by your hotel, by your restaurant. Um, just feeding them another bowl of soup doesn't want them to come back for your soup. They don't like your soup. Okay. You're not Oliver Twist. You're not in front of the room. So let me kind of go backwards on this. Let's kind of paint the picture of HR for hospitality as it has been for quite a while. We have been the only girl in town when it comes to how we treat HR. We believe that we have what everyone wants and we act like it. We tell people what we're looking for. This is what I'm looking for. You have to have this much experience and you have to have this capability. And this is what I want you to be able to have done. And this is all the things that I want. Picture that. Picture HR and how you hire people is much like you're going into a relationship. Um, you don't walk into a bar and think that every single girl there automatically wants what you have. Picture like your Bill Gates versus Brad Pitt. You got to sell yourself here. I may not be the best looking, but I got a lot of things that you're going to want. Unfortunately, we go into like Brad Pitt, single Brad Pitt. I don't want to take away from his wife, marriage from his wife or whatever. Where we walk in thinking, we walk up to somebody and say, "So I'm looking for this, this, and this, and you have to have this, this, and this," and they're just going to pour a drink out your head because, like, you know what, you're not all that. Um, we've operated like that. We have never truly gone forward and said, "This is what we offer." And when we first had to deal with this, we just think we're throwing more money at. Well, we're going to raise what we pay people. That doesn't fix all the reasons why people have decided not to come back from if they were working with us before, and certainly not inspiring people that have never worked with us to come join us. And let me explain that a little bit. It kind of goes to the root of how we treat HR as a department in our industry. HR in our industry is a default management position. And please, I'm not being derogatory to people that are in HR, the people that go for the certifications in HR, the people that have done stellar jobs in HR. It's like defining teachers in general, like, oh, well, they have problems. No, it's the burden that they've been given. It's almost the no-win scenario that they are placed into. And the reason why I say this is because HR is fundamentally built as a department to the preservation and interest of the company that it serves. That's their number one. They're there to make sure that all the rules that we're supposed to follow legally are being followed. All the things that we share to our staff about what we are obligated for is followed. and that we are making sure that we follow the procedures that keep us from potential liabilities of not following consistency. Now, that's to the benefit of everyone because those rules are in place for a reason. We don't want bias in our hiring practices. We don't want bias in our discipline practices. We want conformity, consistency, regardless of all those other variations. So I'm not saying it's a negative thing. It's just how it's used is the first step thing. Every instance related to HR goes through the first filter of where is the company in relationship to this. And so that's not going to go away. So just scratch that. That's just a statement of fact. The next is the commitment to the team that it represents, the interest of the people that it is in oversight of. Well, HR is usually put behind everybody that's in charge of that role that we're in question. So, for instance, as a housekeeper, HR is there, but they don't have direct authority many times over the supervisor of that person and or that person's manager above that. They can confer and infer, and they do have, the big red button that says you're not following policy or you're not following legalities. They have that. But when it comes to actually cultivating culture and influencing that person's job success and all the things around them, they've never really truly been given the reins to do that. In a circle of exec committee, HR is like accounting. They are the filter that everyone goes through, but not to the department that they're deferred to. A bad HR person can cost a company millions of dollars in two ways. One, inappropriate hiring, where they're not finding the right team members for the roles, and it costs money to find and lose and replace and find and all this other stuff. And the other, of course, is not having the guidelines in place and enforced in such a way that it doesn't create a culpability or liability for the company and they get caught where they're financially having to compensate for bad mistakes made. So HR is a very critical position, just like accounting is a critical position, but it's not often looked into the operational decision processes on a day-to-day basis. HR is usually brought in because of an issue. When HR wants to talk about doing breakfasts or lunches for team spirit, it's a sigh. Food and beverage director goes, "Okay, sure, I'll throw in this or I'll put this together for him or whatever." um, the department, but then again, when everyone's enjoying it, then of course the department heads all take credit for it. Yes, well, I brought you this breakfast. Really, it was HR saying, "Hey, we should do a breakfast. We haven't done a breakfast. We haven't said thank you for all the hard work you've done, or whatever it is." So it's a kind of a third wheel sometimes to a two-person relationship. It's there, but it's not always wanted or warned until there's a problem. Then, of course, everybody wants to hide behind the skirts of HR when it comes to an issue, and they don't want to be the one. No, you go talk to them. It's an issue now. It's out of my hands. I did all I could as their supervisor or manager, and now it needs to go to HR. It needs to make sure that everything is legally done. And of course, nobody wants to be called into HR's office where it's like, did you do the 3 steps of counseling? Did you do this and do this? All the guidelines that should be in place for a company. So I've laid the track down of how HR kind of operates. They've been given the task of finding team members. Really, when it comes to the lineage of how successful a company is, HR is right there at the wellspring. Before the river flows, they're there where the water comes out of the ground. Them finding the right team members and finding the right people to fit the roles is a critical first step. As all things, if you take the wrong first step, the road has to be retracted before you go to the right direction. That's a very expensive and time consuming process. So, getting it wrong at the beginning is much more expensive than getting it wrong later. So, let me explain. Sorry, I'm drinking coffee. If the department doesn't know what they want and they just assign over, I want this person to be able to lift 50 pounds over their head, stand on their feet for 6 hours plus, understand how to do functions like fix, make beds, and or carry food, and or cook food, or whatever it is, and they hand this list of needs over to HR. HR is not. They'll take that information and then they go to their resources and say, "How do I get this in front of the people that qualify for this?" That's their mentality. And a lot of times it was a job board. Here we are. Here's our list of positions in the anticipation, going back to my initial analogy, that we are the only girl in town, that people are going to come up to the board in eager anticipation of what do I qualify for so I can work at this place. Those days are gone. We are one of many people asking for people. And if you want to add the reality of even more things to our society, we're dealing with a very mad, angry society right now. All of us are angry people. Our kindness is on a short fuse. Our patience is even on a shorter fuse. And yet we're asking people to actually be the inverse of that. Be patient, be thoughtful, beyond what normally is what's being done in our society. That's hard to find. And everybody is looking for that talent. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why we've lost many people out of our roster when we had furloughed them and kicked them out and said we don't have any business for you to be able to pay you and so forth. Legitimate reasons for most. How it was handled, bad for most. Um, those people found other ways. They found other jobs, they found other opportunities. And then when we say, okay, we're back in business, and boy, we really need you to come back, and people are like, no, you know what? I like it over here. Strangely enough, over here is nicer. They gave me benefits where you were hanging on a stick waiting for me to qualify for it after a duration of time. They gave me steady hours where you were constantly, hey, I can only work you when I need you kind of thing. Okay. And they like the qualities that I had with you, where you said I had to wait and earn my place in line to get all that stuff later in life, where I finally could have my weekends back or my holidays back or better pay or whatever it is. These people are offering right up front. So no, thank you. I'll stay over here. And you, good luck. We're all counting on you. And that's what happened to us in a lots of ways. Um, and so what did we do? We did what we've always done. Well, here's a posting on the town posting wall in the middle of town that says, hear ye, here's the positions we have available." And we stood back and nobody came. And HR is like, "Hey, this is what I do. This is what I am. There's no tools that have been given to me. And yes, there are plenty of platforms out there. And we're going to talk a little bit about them today, where to post your jobs. And some HR people know of these. They are using these. And what do? They go through and they post their positions. But what are they taking? The same information they posted in the downtown center of town that said, here, this is what we're looking for. Okay. Good luck with that. That didn't go very far either. So even though they went to the places that people were looking for jobs, they weren't getting people applying. As a matter of fact, it made the news consistently. People weren't even showing up for interviews, even if they had them scheduled. Job fairs had nobody showing up to these things. And people were sitting back with all their little tchotchkes and squeaky wheels and going, yay, we're going to go ahead and fill this application out. Nope. We made it difficult for people. I could fill out an application with you, walk over to you, and I have to do the same dang thing over there. Golly, how many times do I have to write my name down here? Some platforms solve that. We talk about platforms like Indeed and so forth, where it says fill it in once, put all your information, and then indicate what types you're interested in. We'll show you what's available. So a lot of people did that. So a lot of places put their jobs on there. So here's the difference between what we've always done versus how it needs to get changed. You have a hotel that has, say, a housekeeping position or a houseman position or a server position. And there's certain requirements that we want to make sure are spelled out so that we don't have somebody come in that can't fulfill those actual requirements, meaning you have to be able to lift a certain amount of weight, be on your feet a certain amount of time, preference of skill, preference of hours availability, the ability to show up and work physically, like you have transportation to get to work and so forth. Um, and we post it. Okay. Then there's another person, same job, that talks about we're really looking for people that want to join. We have a great collaborative. We share, we work, we help each other. We try to be flexible to people's needs when it comes to family or transportation issues that they may have. We offer transportation in certain areas to make sure that we can get you in, so you don't have to worry about finding a ride or whatever have you. If that's an issue for you, we have incentive programs, reward programs. We try to do things together so that we know each other well enough that we can ask and rely upon each other. That's a whole different painted picture compared to the got to lift 50 pounds, stay on your feet for 6 hours. Our hourly pay is this. Which one do you think people are going to get hired from? That one. Because what we're realizing now is a career job, first off, the idea, and you have to be old enough to remember this, of going for a job and staying there for the duration of your life already disappeared back in 2008. The last vestiges of anybody career based, I'm going to be here for that long. I get the one job in life I'm going to do. That stake in the heart happened at least in 2008. And I remember clearly in 2008 when people were losing their jobs, 2009 really to be honest. Um, it was really weird because LinkedIn was around, okay, and people were always talking about this is what I've been successful at. This is what I've been accomplishing. This is where I'm at for those that were using LinkedIn. And then all of a sudden, they didn't have a job. And finally, the ice got broken going, "Well, guys, I need a job. Anybody know anybody?" And then the floodgates opened. And everyone's like, "Wow, so do I. So do I. You know what? Do you know anybody?" And then the network really took off in its using because people were like, "Oh, it's okay for me to say I don't have a job." Before it was like you lost your identity. It's like you were embarrassed that you weren't working. Like, what's wrong with you? Why did you get fired? While somebody else was still working. You must be the bad person. You're not the good person. You don't have a job. That stigma was crushed back then. Another stigma that was crushed back then was the duration of work. It was beginning to be understood that in our industry in particular, that 2.5, 3 years was a long time. I know when I was GM at hotels, my life cycle at a hotel, regardless of my success at the hotel, was about 2.5 years. Because one of two things happened. If I was that successful at my hotel, there was a lot of moving and shifting of assets. Another company acquired my hotel from the people that owned it because they saw the value in its production and performance, aka my good job. But by them owning it, they wanted their team to run it. It wasn't a detriment. I mean, it wasn't a negative for me. It's not like they came to me and said, "You're a bad person. We have a better person." No, we have our guy that knows us, that knows our processes, knows our business, knows our company policy, and we're familiar with, and we want them to sit in your chair. We want to hand them the keys over to of the hotel that you have. It's not your hotel. You've been running it, and you've been great. You've been successful. That's the reason why we're buying it, but we don't want you. And that's fine. That was good because that was a leapfrog for me. Either the company I was working with had a better place for me to go, same reason, same purpose, same process, or another company says, "Wow, you crushed it over there. We need you because we have a hotel that we think you could be better at." So it was a good system. It wasn't like I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing. I lost my job at this hotel even though I've been doing so well." You get a little weird, like, "Man, I hope they keep me," but after a while, you're like, "I hope they don't." And I got moved on to another process, another program, another bigger thing, another bigger thing, another big thing. So it all worked. The system fed itself in that way. But what it really meant, every 2.5 years, I was changing jobs. And fortunately, I had a wife that followed me and had a career that she could follow me with. So that we one minute lived in Florida, next minute lived in Texas, kind of thing. It was like, okay, that's what we did. Um, that cycle has been broken. And what's now happened is it's even been changed to where 2.5 years, the reverse question happens. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you advancing? Why aren't you going someplace better? Are you stuck where you are? Are you complacent where you are? It's almost turned into almost, well, I gotta say almost kind of, it really has turned into a 180 from what it was prior to 2008, 2009, where if you left a company before 3 to 5 years, you were the problem. Now, if you're there for 2.5, 3 years, what's wrong with you? It's the reverse. So we have to realize that the team members we're bringing in are temporary. Okay. It kind of lends it to our discussion we had about loyalty programs for brands and so forth. They're outdated, outmoded, and they're not loyalty programs, they're frequency programs. And it's built, as said by the companies, to the benefit of the hotel owners, not to the users of the program. And the system really relies on carrot on a stick. If you acquire enough of something, you'll get a reward. Usually it's a bottle of water. We go to a hotel 110 days out of the year to get a bottle of water. Think about it. Our relationship with our company, how we treat people is they walk in the door for whatever role they have, and they're on an annual review. One, that's assuming they're there annually. Okay, no offense. We'd love to think that great talent stays with us for a long time, but really, in all honesty, they probably won't. And it's unlikely that the durability means they're going to wait until a year later to get a review for a reward for work that they're doing now. So let me continue with that conversation. Annual reviews, worst thing in the world we can do for ourselves. And here's why. Our employee performances are oscillating. There's good days, bad days. We all have good days, bad days. There's days where the bear eats you, and there's days where you eat the bear. And from that reason, a couple of weeks before an annual review, the bear's eating you. Something happened. Something didn't work out the way you intended. Some problem issue. Maybe you had an issue that you had to take time away, or whatever it is. The bad taste in the reviewer's mouth is there, more present than of the 11 and a half months prior to that, where you were doing all those great things. As a matter of fact, I've been in those discussions in every level from being the HR, being the GM, being the department head, being the supervisor, whatever it is, being corporate, where the topic really was, he was really doing great or she was really doing great. Then these past few weeks, just this happened, that happened, this is where it's at. They're needing time off, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if I want to reward that current behavior by giving them the bonus that they quote, everyone thinks they deserve, but because of current circumstances are less likely to get. That's a biased, unfair, antiquated bullshit BS system. Because what does that say to the person when you say, well, you could get from 3 to 5% bonus? Gee, Lauren, we've reviewed it. We've already, talked to everyone that has input. We're going to give you 3%. We feel that there's some things that, here's the list of things. Here's the things, this was satisfactory, not superior. Okay. 5-point scale. Remember those? Still have them. And the person's going, man, I really crushed it so many times for you all. And because I needed time off because I got sick or I had this issue or that guest didn't like me and I didn't handle it well or whatever the current flavor issue is right now, bad taste in your mouth, I'm losing 2% of my potential value next year. And I got to wait a whole year before we come back to this again. So we're literally teaching our team members screw up early. It gets forgotten and then do really super. It's like Christmas for kids, all right? You're a kid all year long, but a couple of weeks before Christmas, woo, I'm going to be on my best behavior so Santa brings me presents. That's what we're teaching our team members. Don't worry about the average consistency of good performance. Nobody remembers that stuff. Instead, just be really good just before your review. Because I've been on those conversations where it's like, Lauren, he was okay. I mean, nothing really stellar. I probably would say he's average, but this past few weeks, man, he has really shined up and really looked good and is really doing a great job. I think we need to really reward that behavior. See, that's the problem with annual reviews. It is a slice of time perspective. Is if you stop time at this moment, let's look at everything that's going on right now, and that's what's being assessed. I used to have arguments with my economics professor because they would preface anything that they were discussing that day with, although things can't be constant, nothing is constant. We're going to stop everything and we look at this one variable as if everything else is constant. And I used to contend that all the time. It's like, so we're making this crap up because you already said it doesn't work this way, but we're going to treat it this way to do the math that we're talking about. You drive me nuts. Instead, we have to realize it in the reality that it is. Everything is fluid and everything is changing. So knowing that people don't have the expectation of durability, because if somebody's performing well, they're on the rise. They want to continue to cash in on the value they represent. If I've done really well as a houseman, I want to progress to being a supervisor of housemen if that's my goal. Okay. And I want the money commensurate with it and the benefits of it and so forth. So that I can then maybe be assistant director of housekeeping, director of housekeeping, AGM, director of ops or something, GM. Maybe that's my path that I want. Okay. As also, and I learned this the hard way, I'll be happy to share this story where I just want to be really good at what I'm doing. I don't need to have a management title or supervisor. I don't want the responsibility. I just want to be really good at what I do. But I want to be rewarded for that performance. So if I'm a houseman, I want to be the best houseman. And no, you don't have to give me a title of senior houseman, director houseman, supervisor houseman. I don't want the responsibility. I don't want people to answer to me. I just want to do really good at my job. And let me time capsule why I say this. This is a hard lesson I learned when I was a GM of a hotel. I had a great server in my restaurant at the hotel. She was amazing. I could throw anything at. I could give her the whole restaurant floor, and everybody would be walking out happy and well served. And a time came up that I needed a restaurant manager, and she was really not excited about it. She really was like, "Well, that's what she trusted me. That's the hard part of the story. She trusted me that I was looking out for her, and so I made her the restaurant manager. Less than a month later, I had to let her go. One, because I couldn't put her back into the role she was in, because the team that she worked with would that just you can't descend down the ladder. The dynamics of that relationship turned very challenging. She had to literally go somewhere else. And she was just a terrible manager because that wasn't her skill set. Her skill set was she was an amazing server. And I was a bad leader. Okay. I was a manager at that point. I was looking to satisfy what I needed, and I was thinking, interpreting her motivation that she wanted to move up. And I should have read the red flags the whole time: her lack of enthusiasm to it, her uncertainty about it, her reminders to me that she's never done it. And I'm like, well, that's no problem because me mentally, hey, no, something I don't know, I want to learn it. She had no interest in it. So being responsible for that and not being the person that could solve the problem before, if somebody at the table wasn't getting good service, she was a server. She was going to serve and solve the problem. As a manager, she couldn't hustle and serve the food because it would take away from the server their livelihood. And she empathized with them and didn't want to take that out of their mouths. So she ended up being a bad manager. And it was the first and only time I ever did that in my life. I would never, and I had never done that again. I do not move people up thinking that I know what they want to do. I learned to ask what they wanted to do. Why do they want to do it? And try to understand, because some people want something because they think of what it is. And then when you find that out and explain to them what it really means, people love the title, hate the responsibility. How many people do you know are like that? A good leader listens to understand what their team is wanting to do. And a good leader also rewards as the reward is merited. I'm a huge advocate of persistent rewards. Why do you have to wait a year to give somebody a salary? And let me explain that in our previous conversations these past few weeks and months about dynamic budgeting. The usual excuse of why I can't give you a raise is it's not in the budget. That's bullshit crap. Okay. Budgets have an inherent flexibility to them and a justification and expansion if it's warranted. Okay. And back in the day when we thought labor was, like I said, the cutest girl in town, where if you don't like it, get out of the way. There's somebody behind you that does. That world has changed now. So even better reason that you can go to ownership and say why I have to change somebody's pay scale and salaries, perhaps because they're good enough not to want to lose. But you should need to justify why this is the solution that you have to put in. Is it really a money issue, or is this just a carrot to give them to be happy? And is there a never ending? Are you creating a habit, an addiction of, well, every time I do something good, I expect more money? There's a lot of mixing pieces. I'm not trying to be naive by my statements. Okay. I know that there are different circumstances. Just giving somebody more money is not the answer because you do create more problems. But the one problem you solve creates two other ones, kind of thing. So if you reward somebody, okay, it could be as simple as an acknowledgement of a successful thing that they've done, and that's culture. It can be a value proposition that you give to them, which is recognition, and it can be a tangible value that carries forward, which is compensation. Just hit your top three right there. Okay. And from that, um, you create a relationship that the person trusts. And when I say that person, I mean your team, because your team talks. Unbeknownst to whether you realize it or not, how you treat somebody's good and bad performance is known by everybody. Let me give you a perfect example. You're going to the airport and you are standing in line to get on the plane. And as we know, the plane has two lines: the people that paid more than you and the people that didn't. The people that paid more than you are in certain zones. First class gets put in because they paid more. Then there's zone one, other people that have high reward points because they fly so often, which means they paid more because they spend more money to be on the carrier and so forth. And then you get to your certain zone that you're a part of, whether it's three, four, whatever the category. Anyway, nobody likes the fact that a gate person at the gate allows everybody else that's not in the zone that's being called to be in line. It's the most frustrating thing. I'm in zone three. I've earned my right to be in zone three or whatever justification I see of it. And I know the person standing in front or behind me or whatever is zone five. It's on their ticket. I saw it. We were all like, they were all standing around. And as people look at their tickets to wait for the zone to be called, you see, you glance, because as you're creeping and crawling up to the gate, okay, you want to make sure that when it comes to being called, that the people crowding in front of you are not in your zone. You go back, excuse me, they're calling my zone, not yours. But when they get in line with you and you know that they're not in the right zone and the gate person doesn't stop and we're kicking them out and say, hey, I'm sorry, we're not calling your zone yet. You're mad. You're mad because they aren't keeping the rules to what they said you're trying to do. And you're trying to follow the guidelines. Say, hey, I understand. I mean, there's zone two. I'm zone four. I can't get in front of them. But if you're saying that it's a free for all, I'm going to get in the free for all too. It breaks down. That's the same environment that you have with your team. If somebody does something not good, okay, and you don't commensurately handle it in a way that you said you're going to handle it as, that deteriorates your authority. It deteriorates the people's respect for you and your role. Like, well, freaking John over there shows up late all the time and he doesn't get flagged for it, docked for it, or his schedule doesn't get like all the things they said they would do if you show up late all the time. So I'm going to show up late. And then when they do, and you say, "Hey, you're going to get penalized," be like, "Oh, to heck no," because over there, John does it all the time, and that's where has to step in because HR has to make sure that the rules are consistent across the board for everyone. It's a high value role for HR. Okay, and it also where that's a positive is also negative because HR is looked as the policeman, the gatekeeper. They're not looked as the team member coordinator. They're just as much to tell a manager or department head they're doing something wrong because they didn't consistently apply the rules as they are to tell a team member below them that they're not following the rules. So they're not really close and dear to everyone. So HR really has to be that person that is perceived as a resource for everyone, from the supervisors and managers, that the HR person is looking for their best interest of finding the best team members, being consistent about what they're doing for the team, being the person that will take the bullet for the department should there be an infraction that they need to step in on. And then they also have to be seen from the team that they are supporting of them, that they're an advocate for them, that if they feel like they're being treated poorly by a supervisor or manager, that the HR is the unbiased voice in the conversation to ensure that there's a resolution to the issue. That, as we've seen in the military examples about sexual assault and so forth, and I'm not trying to make this anywhere in comparison, but just the methodology is when you have to go to the very supervisor that you have the problem with, there is no resolution that's successful because the supervisor is not going to handle themselves unbiasedly. It's just not. So it has to have a third party entity to step in, a moderator to that conversation. That is a trusted and authority based person that can inflict things. They don't have to just defer to the supervisor, which I think is a fall down on how some of our HRs are handled. If HR is perceived as a necessary evil, they're not given teeth to their comments, and supervisors or department heads know that they can always overstep HR's mandates, guidelines in influx, then you have a very ineffective HR department that's pretty much just a marker, person that's sitting in a chair. They're paper pushers, filler outers, do the stuff that the departments don't want to have done, and they're just there to listen to the conversation and rubber stamp most stuff. That's a terrible circumstance to be in. So I talked a lot about the fact that our topic today was about fixing some of this stuff. I've painted a lot of picture of how the dynamics of HR work. I've talked a little bit about some of the things that you can potentially do, like for instance, doing perpetual acknowledgments of performance. I find that to be a critical component that's being missed in our HR departments right now. We tend to throw just miscellaneous stuff at people. It's not that people don't appreciate a free meal or a free little attaboy reward or a gifty Trotsky thing or whatever like that. It's just not seen at the same value as what it was intended. When HR goes to ownership and says, "We really, these guys have been really working their butts off. We should, have a food truck show up and give free breakfast to them in the morning." Okay. Here's a lot of what happens. It's not that it's not appreciated. Okay. Ownership thinks that they are the second coming. Like, look at how cool we acknowledge you, and this is all the cool stuff we're doing for you. Look, there's a food truck showing for you. We really want to show you how much we appreciate it. That's their perspective of it. The team in front of ownership be like, "Oh wow, you guys are the best. Thanks. This is so man. Nothing says thank you like a food truck at 8 a.m. Even though I'm coming in at 10 a.m. for my shift, but I'll come in 2 hours to get the breakfast that you give me. But in front of you, you're the bomb, man. You're the bomb." Behind the doors, it's like, come on, man. If you're gonna do this, one, do it when everybody can enjoy it. And the people that work in the afternoon, how about us? We got the cookies. Oh, yay! And a lot of times the food that's prepared for them is usually because it's a similar menu that a banquet just was running with, and it's like don't you think they know that? Oh, the reason why we have beans today is because beans was on the menu at the banquet event. So yeah, of course we're restaurant. And the restaurant people talk to everybody else. So everybody knows what's going on, except for oftentimes the ownership that thinks they are the ta-da, I'm the really cool person that's giving you all this stuff. And it's not that it's not valuable, and it's not that it didn't cost money and all these other things, but the impact value is not perceived the same as the point I'm trying to make. A lot of times they want to be heard. What would they want? Is there a way? Because they work the schedule. They know exactly coming in 8 o'clock, five people coming in at 8 o'clock is not worth it when three people at 8 o'clock can do it. And the other two people can come in at 9 o'clock and still feel good and rotate that between the five people. People like that. They're like, you know what? This is my 9 o'clock day. I'm good. I don't have to get up that much earlier for 8 o'clock. Or vice versa. Somebody says, I love getting up early. Please don't put me on the 9 o'clock. If you begin to listen and resonate with your departments, you can really create some very good wins with them by simply understanding what it is that they are most worried or interested in getting to do about. Sometimes it's about schedule, sometimes it's about pay, sometimes it's about acknowledgement, sometimes it's about changing it up or just following through and being consistent with the guidelines that you've given everybody. Please, if somebody's constantly late, I'm the coworker. I don't want to be the dork that goes to them and says, "Dude, I had to do your work until you showed up on time, and just because our boss there doesn't seem to care, I do." Some people aren't up for that. Some are right up in front of it, you know, and it creates conflicts. But you know, the idea of it is that leadership and HR should be listening to this. HR should know. I guess that if you're a movie buff fan, the administrative assistant in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where she knew everybody in the school and who knew who and who was popular and that's what HR should be in your organization. They should know the who's and the what's. There's leaders in every department, and it's not because of their title, it's because how they're perceived by their coworkers. HR should know who they are because they're the influencers in those organizations, those departments. They know how things get worked. They know that Sue, who's the person, okay, she has her cart, okay? That's her cart. Nobody else gets to use that cart. Even if they need a cart, that's Sue's cart. And Sue racks and stacks that stuff and usually knows how to you'll find that they will pigeonhole supplies if you're shortchanged on supplies, so that they always have theirs, so they don't have to not be able to do something. There's there's politics and dynamics in every department. I know I'm pointing towards housekeeping. Food and beverage has the same thing. I remember clearly when you rolled silverware. Let's put that as an example. I would roll my silverware and hide it. Why? Because my fellow workers, to fill their silver rolling criteria, would go find my silverware that I rolled and snag it and put it in their pile so they'd have to roll less. There's little dynamics in everything in the world. Okay. Um, the idea is that HR is aware of this stuff as best they can be. They won't know all of it, but they'll know most of it. And the reason why they would get to know that also builds the respect that HR has with their constituents. So we beat that up. Let's talk about what you can do to fix even more stuff. One is stop posting what you're wanting. Okay. Start posting what you're offering. Well, not all the formats have that kind of room. I mean, if you go to the Indeeds and all the other jobs, there's over 910 job boards that are actively able to be put stuff on. Not all of them are applicable. Please understand this isn't a shotgun thing. But that's the diversity that HR faces on where do I post for what. HR departments should immediately know whether they ask team members or whether they know it from being that sensitive to their market, what job boards are being used in their market for what positions. Flat out. There are two types of job search, those that are necessarily local and those that aren't necessarily local. The division line is usually the skill line. You have skilled position and you have line position. And it's the demeanor to say that the line position isn't skilled. It's very skilled. It's just when it comes to skilled position, you usually refer to it to educational necessities and or previous work experiences that require a skill level. So it gets the nomenclature of being skilled. All positions are skilled. Even if you're starting in green, skill is personality, person, and what tools you bring to the table. So all positions are skilled. Some require other requirements, which call them skilled. So going back to this two segments, local means they have to show up at the property. They have to be that server, be that houseman, be that housekeeper, be that front desk agent, be whatever it is. And because of that, your job search is related to the geography of the location. They have to be able to go in the door. It doesn't mean that skill position may not have that same requirement. If you want um, your director of sales to be sitting in a chair at your property, okay, they eventually have to be near the hotel to do so, but they might be hired outside of the area and brought in because that level of job has with it the added value that they might be compensated to get from wherever they are to being at the hotel. So you're not just looking for a director of sales that is in the market. You might look broader for a director of sales that you're willing to bring to the market. So that's where the two designations come: geographic value versus a larger perspective of skilled value that needs to come in. So job boards and job platforms have that ability to say where you're looking for the job in. And this now goes into a discussion I think is that is a huge fix option for HR, and that is marketing. HR has never been a department that says can't get me enough marketing. They're cute. They put some little colorful flyers on boards in the back of the house, and they'll put some decorations up in the break room or something like this, or find a local vendor to bring in cookies or something, or have the restaurant, whatever it is. That kind of feel good stuff, that's marketing. I'm not going to take that away. But marketing in the sense of what it means to do for like the hotel or the restaurant has to be applied to your HR strategy. You have to put some lipstick on your conversation, basically. And I know that marketers are often looked at like lawyers. You don't like them. You think that they ruin things. They overhype stuff. They over talk stuff. They're cotton candy, and it's all smushy squishy hands when you handshake stuff. That's how marketers are often perceived. Salespeople are perceived the same kind of way. It's like there's a lot of front, as Texas used to say, there's a lot of hat, no cattle. That's how marketers are perceived until you need one. And then you realize it's about method of communication. That's the value of marketing, is the method of communication. How do you get what you want to say to in front of the people that are most interested in listening? That's the core of marketing. Like I said, it's like lawyers. You want, when you do need a lawyer, you want that pit bull, tenacious person looking out for your interests, because you walk into a thing, oh, everyone's going to be fair and equitable, and you realize, nope, the other side's trying to fight you for anything, and you need a lawyer from your side. So I kind of equate marketers' perception with lawyers' perception. It's great that you don't like them, but you like them when you need them. So all that mentality aside, looking at HR, they need to be able to know how to market. How do I take what I need and translate it into what I have to offer? A lot like what marketers do for hotels. This is what we need. We need business. We need people to pay us money for what we're offering. That's what marketing is being tasked with. Same mentality with HR. I have these roles to fill. I need people to come in and do that. So you need to change your voice, not what I want, what I have. This is it's literally putting some cologne on, combing your hair, dressing nice, and going into the bar. First step on making sure that at least you're not being turned away because you smell funny, look weird. Just saying. The next is you have to be able to communicate all the things that are valuable that you represent, your culture, what you're offering, the things that you think are making you a differentiator to some other people. In other words, if you were Bill Gates versus Brad Pitt going into a bar, okay, I got money. Did I mention I had money? Anyway, just making fun of that. The idea is you have to go, and instead of saying, "So look, yeah, you looks like you're what I want. You're the right height. You got the right hair color. Blah 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 blah." Instead, you're going and going, "Hi, I love flowers. Do you like flowers? I love flowers. Whatever." Not my pickup line. the the idea is listening to what people find valuable and then seeing whether you have what they find valuable. That's the first filter. Rather than, if you ask any HR person, when they put jobs on places, they get so much diversity of applicants, okay, coming in that have no reference of value to why they're applying for the job. Truly don't. There is no reason in the world why this person would be applying for what you're saying this job is. They're just shotgunning out on these platforms that this is my resume, and everything that's in a area that they think is in their qualified area, like it's in my town. I'm applying for everything. Let me sort out what maybe I'm interested in later, which explains why we don't get people showing up in interviews and why we get unqualified people in the sense of they don't have the skill sets that we're looking for to fill the job best and all that other stuff. It's because they're just shotgunning out stuff. It's turned into, instead of a symbiotic relationship, it's turned into um, a binary relationship, opposite sides of the same equation to it. So, being better at soliciting what you have to offer and what it is you think is best fit. Not saying you need this, but rather saying this is what we're thinking is what that we know is works best for this. Because I'm often surprised. I used to hire people not in the hotel business specifically because they had not started in the hotel business, and the reason being was they saw what we did from the eyes of the consumer before it got tainted by understanding how the business is run. I've often made this same quote. It's like for them, when they walk up to a front desk of a hotel, nobody's behind the front desk. They see it as this is a service issue. Why isn't nobody behind the front desk? I'm walking up to the front desk. This is where I'm supposed to go, but nobody's here. If you're in the business for any length of time, you look at your watch, and go, oh, it's shift change, or oh, they just cut their staff down because they're not having expected traffic to the front desk. You begin to rationalize why something's happening because you understand the metrics of what it does to do this business, compared to just the blind innocence of that's not right. So that's why I liked hiring people that weren't starting from the hotel business. That didn't mean I hired anybody. I looked for the intangibles: personality, positivity, interest in other people, their willingness to help. Those things weren't on a resume. They could be said, they could be flowery words that are thrown in, but that's where the interview process comes in. The vetting. Do they reflect what they say they are? That's where HR can be a huge help, but they're not. They get a checkbox list from a department saying, this is the position I need filled, and how many of them maybe. This is what they need. They need to be able to carry 50 pounds, stand on the feet for 6 hours, blah, 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 be able to get to work by themselves, and this is how much we're going to pay. And then HR just plugs it into these platforms. And then whoever shows up, they waste so much time. If there is a lot of applicants, that's a positive statement to say that, to go through, nobody's qualified. None of these people they're walking in the door and there's just nothing about them that says they're going to do well at the role. Solving that means being clear up front, sharing the desire, because good people look for good roles. If you're talking about culture, and what I mean by that is teamwork, support, collaboration, acknowledgement of success, support of investment. Like, we'll train you. We're not needing that you need to know how to do the job completely. We're not saying you need 4 years of education, of experience and everything else. If you're not familiar with this role but have the aptitude to do it, we'll train you. I always looked at it in any circumstance that I can train anybody for what I feel like I know. I can train anybody anything except for one thing: the willingness to learn it, the motivation. Can't train somebody that. You can't teach them that. You can only go over and teach what it is that it takes to do it, but you can't teach them the reason to do it. The old horse to the water thing, that's the problem. So a lot of times that may be what you're looking for, is really not so much that they fill some sort of previous experience requirement, previous education requirement, any of that, but instead, do they have the aptitude to do the role? Now, obviously, certain roles, and that we go back to that skill versus line position mentality, require an understanding of the how to do the role. You really, to be a director of sales, you may have the skill set to be a personable, communicative, genuine person, willing to help and all the other stuff. And you can certainly learn aspects of how to sell, but you can't be a DOS. You might be able to be brought into the sales team at a lower level, because there's functions that go beyond just what system are you using, and um, what's the logistics of doing it. There's a history of being able to have done it to some degree, or at least being exposed to how it's done, because a lot of times assistant director of sales, okay, becomes director of sales. Kind of like in football, you just don't go from player to head coach. You know what a head coach does. It's not like you don't, but there's a difference of knowing it from them that side versus the side you're exposed to watching it from. So you should go through a progression so that you understand the growing responsibility of the function of the role. So I'm a huge advocate of certain roles needing previous experience. I'm not saying wipe the slate clean, take whoever is walking the door as long as they smile and shake your hand nicely. I'm saying in the circumstances of roles that require previous understanding of how to run the role, maybe they didn't do it directly, but they're ready to do it directly, that you treat that with HR to understand what that means. Because HR is only going off the list you gave them. A good HR person will ask more questions than the information you gave them. For the most part, HR is pretty much busy, like everybody else is, doing more than one task. And because of that, they're going to take what you give them and just push it in front of all the channels that they think are going to be available for them to get positions and roles offered. That's doing a disservice because then they waste their time going through the unqualified. Anybody and everybody's coming through because they post their, and this is the problem. It's not that the person looked and said, "Oh, that job, let me send that resume." No, on the platform, it was convenience of saying, "Any job in this geographic area, send my resume to." So the system is literally choking the system with sending out unqualified, unrelated applicants to jobs simply for one filter criteria. How do I know? I build programs like this. You create conditional workflow statements. If you choose this, this is where it's going to go. Okay. That's what these platforms do. I want everything in this area. Great. Everything in that area is going to get your resume. Doesn't mean you're even interested in the job. It just means that the platform says we've sent your resume to 827 places. Yes, but 821 of them have no interest, nor do you have any interest in them. The three or four that you might, you got to go through 824 places to figure that out. The system hurts the system by doing that. What you're looking to do from an HR perspective is you're really looking to create the interest in what you're offering meaning this is what we have, this is what we want, of people that know what they are interested in doing in a way that they're going to reach to you directly. And from that, you can see based on what they say about themselves whether they might be a fit for what you're looking for. That declutters a lot of stuff. And these platforms can do this. There's some very interesting centralization platforms. I use one for one of my clients that's very powerful called CVViz, which allows you to not only aggregate all your job postings, but allows you to submit them to a lot of platforms that you designate. It actually helps you find platforms based on the job role that you're looking for. To say these platforms based on the location of the job you're looking for and the skills that you're looking for, these platforms might be helpful for you. And you can assign them. Some are free. A lot of them are, well, you're going to have to pay advertisement on these platforms to show up on the top of the listing profile, just like with anything. You can be on the list, but you might be on the list on page 50, or you can pay to be on the page one, where more people see you, just like search engine optimization. So that decision has to come in. So, which means a discussion in HR has to come up. How much is this role worth? How critical is this role? Because I might have to spend some money to get a person that we feel is a good fit for this role. I might have to spend a few $100s. Now, adding that to our earlier conversation, how long do people stay in roles? There's a cost value proposition to this. Like, okay, likelihood is that this person 8 months in the row will might begin fishing for something else and we might lose them. But you're telling me it's going to cost me $500 to find this person. Well, what is this role? If it's a skilled position, relatively decent salary thing kind of thing, $500 is not a huge issue. Now you can go out to headhunters, but you're also being treated the same as everybody else. You're on a list of things. Somebody goes to the headhunter, the recruiter. Sorry, I call them headhunter, recruiter, and they literally just say, "Oh, you want these kind of roles? Here's my list of those roles." Shove. And you're getting a lot of applicants that might not want to go to Duluth, Montana, and they had an interest, they want to go to Florida. But you know what? The recruiter, unless you're high enough level that they see a bigger paycheck for, aren't going to spend time with you. Where you said, "Hey, I want to go to Florida." Yeah, okay. If they even made a note about it. But if you're, high salaried person that they're going to get bank some nice, finder fee for, you sure as heck they're going to remember that you wanted to go to Florida. They're only going to look for few people in Florida because they want to cash in on plugging you into a role so they get a nice fat check. So there's all these aspects of systems that work. An HR person navigates this. An HR person has to not only listen to what's being asked of them in the organization for the roles that they're trying to find people for, but they need to ask questions beyond the information provided. Because the reason why they're in HR and a person's in charge of a department is the person's very good at the skills required in that department. Doesn't mean that they are excellent in their HR skills or the leadership skills. They might be in a growth pattern themselves that they're learning to be better leaders. Okay. So, you as an HR person, skilled and more experienced in the world of finding talent and working through all the things that are needed to do that and creating culture and team and associated with all the departments, need to help the department when they say, well, I need this person. Here's my stats on the job description. That's great, Lauren. Um, I know you really love getting everyone together and having alley rallies. Can you talk a little bit about that? Well, you know what it is. It's where we get together every morning, make sure that we discuss our arrivals and departures, rooms out of order, engineering taking care of stuff, our deep cleaning programs. Just everyone knows what's going on, and whether we have short crew or long crew, or whether we're doing something or having a piece of equipment repaired or whatever. Huh? You know what? I'd like to put that into the job description as part of the culture that they're joining. That they will always be well informed, that when they come in, they just don't get thrown to doing whatever they're supposed to do and they get lost and there's no toilet paper that day to put into rooms. And it's frustrating because guests get mad at them because they're asking for toilet paper and they don't have anything to give them. You know, that gets translated by a good HR person that then sits down and says, okay, so I need to find these roles. First off, we know that this role requires that they have to be nearby to get here. But I also know that that role sometimes means that some people don't have their own cars. So they have to be within a bus or public service area that they can get travel. Or the hotel can decide we're going to provide shuttle service at certain times. I had hotels in the Florida Keys. The people that worked at our hotels couldn't afford to live in the Keys. They lived in the mainland area. And yes, we could hire them and they could make it down on their own bus trip. Or two, it's better to have our own bus service or buy into a lease program of a bus that did that. So that literally the bus showed up in Florida City at 6:30 a.m. and everybody working that day got on the bus to be at my doorstep at my hotel at 8 a.m. Okay, to work that day. And sometimes we had to have accommodations where people stayed 2 or 3 days before going back. So they were working 10-hour 3-day shifts or something. There's lots of creativities of things that go on based on your circumstances. The point I'm trying to make is an HR person has to understand that. So when they're looking for these roles, they can define it in a way that people can understand because we're really looking for reinstituting the culture of our hospitality industry. The heart of the servant, the I want to be a part of something that provides service to others. Cleaning a room is not the enjoyable thing. Cleaning a room that gives a person that's staying a feeling that they've accomplished, that they did something that helped somebody stay. They made a good income from this. They're part of a great team. They have good business friends, business buddies that they're a part of. This is all a part of an HR person. So these are the fixits that have to go on intrinsically inside. The exterior fixits are use platforms that you can better quantify what you're offering. Make sure that it's targeted to the people that would be most interested in listening to what you have to say. Declutter a lot of the traffic that comes to you just by checking a box saying, yeah, I put don't quit bugging me. I put that job on platforms. You're getting all the applicants that are even willing to come in, blah, blah. It's an excuse finding. It's how many pieces of furniture can I throw between you and the guy with the knife? You know, get away from me. I'm just deflecting your aggravations. HR has to be stepping in, leaning into these issues, changing how they're approaching this, using marketing tools to better change their voice and talk about how they are looking for people and what they have to offer about what they're offering for people to come in. These are the fixits that our HR departments have to come in and tackle with us. So we are literally in our hour. And I tried to stay off the soapbox as much as I could. And I hope I gave you some interesting perspectives that will maybe influence how you handle your HRs and so forth. I welcome and solicit all of your feedback all the time, globally as we are, around the world. By all means, please send me an email at Lauren at Hospitality Digital Marketing for any feedback that you have, any suggestions of topics that you would like. And of course, if you would like to be a guest speaker on the show, I welcome and solicit that always. Please reach out to me and say, hey, I would like to be on the show, either to join you and talk about this, and or I would like to be on the show and bring these people with me to talk about a topic. I welcome all of that. And if you're watching us on any of our social platforms, such as Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, what have you, thank you so much. I'm sorry I don't really being the one man here that doing this. I can't answer, respond to all of your topics, but I do get back to them. And thank you all for that. Literally, this show's topic came from one of those. Again, thank you. But also our TV channel. If you like watching us on TV, the live show each week is always free on our hospitality channel. Look out for it on Roku, Android TV, Amazon TV, Apple TV. You'll find us there. Just look for Hospitality Channel on the channel edition. We do have paid for content, $4.99 a month on that channel. You can go, but there'll be more content being added behind that gateway. Um, and of course, I will get back to everyone's comments. I will be doing a recap podcast. We have 5 podcasts, but the one I do is hospitality marketing. We'll do a recap of this, and we'll dive into some tools. Actually, I will add more conversations related to HR tools in the podcast to talk more directly about what tools can be useful for HR departments to better find and cultivate talent to come to their hotel. So with that, my name is Lauren Gray. Thank you for the privilege of your time, and look forward to talking to you all again next week. Front to what they represented if you were not happy with something. We don't
And
get
that's
that.
what we
It's like,
hear.
hey,
It's
yeah,
an ownership
that was
thing.
their
It's
hotel. Yeah,
mine.
they owned that was their thing.
Yeah.
And here it's like, we get to just say, hey, if you don't like it, talk to them about